everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of The Best You, a coaching podcast. It's Gary here again, and thank you very, very much for joining me again for what I hope, or I should say I'm sure, will be some quality edutainment again. That's the hope anyway, isn't it? I hope you're all doing well and investing in whatever work you've committed to getting you closer to the best you. And following on from episode 1, where we did a bit of an introduction of me and why I'm doing what I'm doing, an overview of what got us here, and a little bit of an overview of the second blog that we'd put on the website there, the 7 steps to a successful career pivot. In this episode, we are going to follow through the content provided in blog number 3, which we called Pendulum Reactions, what to watch out for. So to provide a wee bit of an overview on the topics covered in the blog, for quite some time, I've been finding myself pondering why human emotions are so difficult to identify and manage, even on a good day. It's not just for bad days. And then that led me to start to consider what happens when emotional reactions to certain circumstances involves a decision to do, I guess you could call it like a complete 180 on an existing attitude, belief, approach, or behaviour. I think we've all experienced it, haven't we? And maybe we've all been culpable of a similar type of behaviour in and of ourselves as well. So, when the reaction is so emotionally volatile, I think volatile is probably a better word to use than violent, that it can have a destructive tendency and certainly have negative outcomes as a result of those destructive tendencies. So those were the type of questions that I've been pondering for quite some time, and probably more so because they've been present in my personal and professional life. So I thought that now was a time to at least raise awareness, pop something down on paper, as it were, on the pendulum effect, and dive a little bit deeper into the topic. So before we get to that particular topic and content for this week, I'm going to give a wee bit of a rundown of what you can expect in this episode. So in a wee bit here, I'll give a quick overview of what I've been up to, which is essentially what I've been learning since the last pod. And I suspect some episodes there won't be a whole bunch of share-worthy information. Not that I'm not learning every day, as we all are, but just some of it won't be necessarily very edutaining or interesting. And on other occasions, there might be lots. So I guess we'll just see how that goes over time. But this time, I'm also going to provide a wee bit of a quick book review for you. And the book for this time is from my own archive, which, quite honestly, is a fancy way of saying that I already read it and I already captured my own thoughts and notes in it, so I didn't really have to do a whole hell of a lot of work for this particular segment. So, but that's what we'll go with anyway. My own personal archive. Yes, let's leave it at that. And this particular book for this week is Crucial Conversations by Joseph Grenny, Kerry Patterson, Ron McMillan, Al Switzler, and Emily Gregory. And what inspired me to read this particular book was in the place that I currently work right now. One of my leaders for my day job, if I could say that, which is as a project manager and coach as well, Janine and her leadership team have been referring to this and have been reading it, have read it over time, and certainly have been trying to adopt a lot of the principles from it. I believe that also in my current employer that there are some internal courses offered on it too. So basically the topic of the book kept coming up, and I've been a wee bit delinquent on some of the more commonly known classics, as in book classics. So I thought it was time to dig in and just see what the buzz was about this specific book, about Crucial Conversations. And I'll tell you, honestly, I wasn't disappointed. The book is pragmatic, it's practical, it's to the point, it's humorous. I love books like that, and very, very easy to read. One of those books that quite truly I didn't want to put down, and one that certainly won't be gathering dust on my shelf either. It's one of those ones that I think you'll find you would regularly go back to. And in terms of the actual book report itself, please don't worry, it's not going to be boring. I'm just going to point out some of the main highlights that struck a chord for me, and how I will use, or I'm already using, these in my coaching practice. And so yeah, let's start with crucial. What is a crucial conversation, I should say. And crucial conversations involve opposing opinions, strong emotions, and high stakes. I'll say that again. They involve opposing opinions, strong emotions, and high stakes. Now, the high stakes in a crucial conversation could be subjective, so it's important to appreciate that your version of a high stake may not be the same as the others. So something that you, for example, might say, why is this such a big deal? This is nonsense. This is nothing worth talking about. It might not be the same for the other person, and that's essentially the theme that would come through in the book as well. So to be able to recognise that your version may not be the same as the other person that you're conversing with. So the essence of the book is that they have 7 principles of crucial conversations, and the first one is start with heart, which is essentially focusing on what you really want to get from the conversation. The second principle is learn to look, and that's really looking for where the conversation has started, how it's going, where it's headed, and then take the appropriate action where needed to get it to where you need it to be if it is veering in some way off track. Principle number 3 is make it safe, and understanding what safety in the context of the conversation means, and then making it safe, and then correcting things when safety has been compromised or it looks like safety might be compromised. And that's safety not just for you, but for the other person who's involved in the crucial conversation as well. Principle 4 is master my stories, which is establishing exactly what your story is and tracing your path to action. They spend quite a lot of time talking about the path to action, and then continuing to check in on where you're at in your story as it relates to the conversation to understand whether there's any course correction required as well. Principle number 5 is state my path, and state is actually an acronym as well, and it stands for share your facts, tell your story, ask for others' paths, talk tentatively, and encourage testing. And then measure all of this against whether you are or whether you believe you are on or off your path within that particular conversation as well. So state my path is number 5. Number 6 is explore others' paths. And that's essentially actively exploring others' views and checking in on how you're continuing to explore these throughout the conversation. So constant awareness, constant dialogue, constantly understanding, and having a lot of degrees of intentionality within the conversation is really prevalent through the 7 principles that they have. And the 7th and final principle that they have is move to action. So deciding how you will decide within a conversation, if you understand, and follow me, like how you're going to kind of bring a conversation to conclusion, what you're actually going to decide to do, how you're going to behave within this decision framework, and then putting the necessary checks and balances in place to ensure that the required follow-up will actually happen, and taking those specific steps and action items and putting them in a format that's going to actually be palatable for all parties who are party to the conversation in and of itself. So some key questions that I've used with clients, which are directly from the book. So when I use them with clients, with my coaching clients, and giving absolute credit to the book when doing so, of course, is what do I really want for myself? So this is all within the context of a conversation, remember. What do I really want for myself? What do I really want for others, party to the conversation? What do I really want for the relationship with the person or persons that I'm conversing with? And how would I behave if I really wanted those results? So I'm going to repeat that again. What do I want? What do I really want for myself? What do I really want for others? What do I really want for the relationship? So considering and jotting down, maybe if that's your style, information related to each of those things, and then answering the kind of anchor question of that. How would I behave if I really wanted those results? And then you will have more appropriate information to take to the conversation and more information to refer to as the conversation develops, as to seeing whether you are on or off track. I think these questions are brilliant. They're simple, they're relatively easy to answer, and when you actually answer them for yourself, they are so powerful as well. We also go on to talk a little bit about silence and violence in conversations. So silence being masking your emotions, masking the topic at hand, or things like that, avoiding and withdrawing from the conversation, even if you're still physically present. And the violence part would be controlling and over controlling the conversation, labeling what is happening within a conversation, and I guess the inference there would be incorrectly labeling the conversation topic or where it's headed, and then attacking as well, attacking the other person, not physically, but, verbally, emotionally, in some other manipulative sort of way as well. So silence and violence, another prevalent part of the book as well. And as they talked about a wee bit in the 7 principles, safety was another key part in starting with establishing a mutual purpose to the conversation, and then ensuring mutual respect throughout the conversation is a key component, foundational part of what they would label as safety within a crucial conversation. They then go on to say, talking about the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we actually genuinely sit down and consciously tell ourselves, and there are clever stories, and they are one of those is being the victim, which is past looking, and intentionally ignoring or downplaying your role in a problem. And then villain stories, which are also past looking, looking to the past, of course. And that's exaggerating our own innocence. I love the way they put that, exaggerating our own innocence. And then there's the helpless stories, which are future looking. And then that's where you tell yourself a story that you're powerless to do anything healthy or helpful about what you think is going to happen. So clever stories, villain stories, and helpless stories as well. And they spend a bit of time talking about those. I thought those were very poignant as well. And they do mention that some crucial conversations go badly because you're actually having the wrong conversation. And if you're having the wrong conversation, then your emotions and your reactions can appear completely disproportionate to the topic at hand. And then you'll start to see, things go awry. In any preparation that you've done, possibly asking yourself the 4 questions I mentioned earlier there about what you want for yourself, for others, for the relationship, and how would you behave. Those could be somewhat moot if you're having the wrong conversation. So something to figure out, and that might be something you have to do after the fact, after the conversation has ended, but it gives you a wee bit more tools and ammunition to be able to maybe do a timeout in a conversation and say literally the words, hold on, I think we're having the wrong conversation here. The conversation I thought we were having was, and then insert the topic of the conversation and try and get yourself back to safety and try and get yourself back to being in dialogue as well. And they talk about stories left unattended don't get better with time. They just ferment, not in a good way. And then, as I mentioned, they're just being in dialogue. That's one of the key parts that I've taken away, and I use that kind of in my daily dialogue, actually, in work and in life, where asking yourself, within the conversation, are we playing games with each other here, or are we actually in dialogue? Are we talking about what we're supposed to be talking about in the way that we're supposed to be talking about it, with the mutual safety being in place already to get us progressing, to get us to where we need to be? And then again, reinforcing the fact of making it safe and doing anything that you can to restore safety. So those were the main highlights for me. That's your first and my first ever book report that I've ever done. So I hope that you enjoyed it. And I would be delighted to hear from anyone out there who has read the book and just to get in touch with me and let me know what resonated from the content for them. In essence, if you're in a role or position in work or life, where you're having crucial conversations, this book honestly will be a guiding light for you. As I mentioned earlier, very, very easy to read, very good principles to apply, and not too difficult to really pick up on the topics that they're sharing. So I'd love to hear from anyone that has had a good experience or not with the book. Any comments are most welcome. And next up in my pile of books, kind of coming hot on the heels of this, I'm not sure if it will actually be literally next up because I have a few on the go right now, but is Crucial Accountability, which is the Crucial Conversation sequel, and they report this to be for leaders and managers, and it's a performance management handbook that teaches effective communication skills and proven influence skills to help resolve poor performance, unmet expectations, and bad behaviour. Now that sounds a wee bit sinister, but I'm hoping it's not actually that, and in coaching land we do, coaching for development and coaching for performance, and development is the person in and of themselves and how they want to develop and move forward and to get to where they want to be the best version of themselves, of course, and coaching for performance is dealing with emergent situations. It's dealing with, I have a problem to solve, and how do we move our people through to perform in a different way that's going to be more commensurate with what's required as well. So it seems like crucial accountability is certainly along the performance track of that, and if it's half as good as crucial conversations, then well, that literally means that crucial conversations is twice as good as crucial accountability. But I'm sure it's by most of, if not all of, the same authors. So I suspect it's going to be a similar experience, and hopefully with the same type and style of information as well. So what else have I been up to since we last chatted? I've done a wee bit more work on my website, garygillen.com. I posted the first pod, of course, which hopefully you had a chance to listen to. And I have the framework ready for my next blog, which is going to be on values, and I hope to have that out here shortly as well. So I'm continuing to work through the required curriculum work for the positive intelligence operating system that I talked about on the last pod, and this, I have to say, quite honestly, this past couple of weeks has been very hectic in life and in work. So I'm not truly fully in a groove with getting to the kind of homework and daily work that has to happen in order to get the best benefit from the PQ operating system. So I will get there. I'm human and I'm busy like everyone else is, and I just have to give myself a little bit of a break when I can't get to what I want to try and get to. Just a wee reminder, if you're not familiar with the PQ framework, it is educating participants in the operating system of their psychological makeup. From my perspective, it's to help me understand both my own and that of clients as well. And my coaching practice and everyone is made up of sage and saboteurs. It's brilliant. I'm loving it, thoroughly enjoying learning everything about it. And, and genuinely using, whatever I'm learning with clients on a daily basis. Quite honestly, such as the prevalence and importance and simplicity of the information that we are learning. Other books on the go, I should probably have mentioned this after the book report there, but I kind of just forgot. As well as Crucial Accountability, I did get John C. Maxwell's latest book, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication, and I've already started that, and I'm already kind of hooked. This is definitely going to be one of those ones that I'm going to race through as quickly as I do for any other books that I love as well. It's very, very well written. I love John Maxwell's stuff that he does. I love the way that he writes, and I love the way that it's so simplistically put and so easy to follow and understand as well. So that'll be a future book report of some description. And a couple of ones that I've kind of picked up, actually really just refound after kind of misplacing them in the house here, is Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. I'm probably about maybe about 2/3 of the way through that. And Simon Sinek's Start With Why as well. So I'm going to clean my backlog up and get back on track with all these unfinished books, and then, start to read a wee bit more newer stuff, or delve a wee bit more into some of the other classics that I haven't quite gotten to just yet. So anyway, on to the actual content that is the main theme of this, and just to kind of embellish the actual content of blog 3 Pendulum Reactions, a wee bit of background in this one. I have been using the term pendulum people or pendulum reaction, and literally when I'm doing it with people, I do the pendulum motion, and I've been doing it for quite some time, sometimes with clients and sometimes with my day job as either a coach or a project manager, and sometimes as a parent to Leo or a partner to Erin or something like that. But the one great thing about raising my own conscious awareness is that even more now than ever before, I do start to see patterns, and I do start to recognize patterns for what they are, and I start to notice the frequency with which people are reacting into certain situations, and that's absolutely 100% to do with my coaching training and my ongoing development work that I am investing in. So I did sit down to jot down my thoughts on pendulum reactions, and And I came up with the blog content that I published, and hopefully if you haven't read it already, you'll take a wee peek at that. And essentially what we're really saying is working in life today involves a variety of emotional responses, good, bad, indifferent. We are emotional beings and we are responding emotionally all day, every day. And these responses can be somewhat predictable. And here's a key point: whether you consider the response from yourself or others to be appropriate or inappropriate is not the point here. That's not the point. But they can be predictable or unpredictable. And either way, we need to be able to exercise a level of emotional agility to just essentially just get through the day, if I could coin that phrase a little bit there. It's not easy when you think about it, with the type and style of people that we are personally, the type and style of people that you're dealing with in your own life. It takes a level of resilience to be able to navigate the winds of change that come with dealing with human beings on any given day. So what happens when an emotional reaction to a circumstance does involve a decision? And by the way, that's another key point. And, someone is making a decision to have a pendulum reaction. So if you get a rationale for it's not my fault, then with some excuse inserted here, I don't quite buy that one. People are making a conscious or subconscious decision to have a reaction in the way that they do. So if that reaction is a complete 180 degree on an existing attitude, belief, approach, or behavior, and then it seems that the reaction is so emotionally volatile that it can have destructive tendencies, sometimes I would be very open to appreciating and believing that a pendulum reaction could have building up, constructive tendencies, and it could come with, discernible positive changes in behavior and positive outcomes to that. But not always, and I don't want you to think that this is all about mood swings or people being absolutely inconsistent or anything like that. What I'm really referring to here, and sometimes this can be lost in the text when you kind of read the dry text on the blog. What I'm really talking about is the drastic changes that we would see in a person's attitude. So I'm going to go through all four of those because I've mentioned it a couple of times now: the attitude, the belief, the approach, and the behavior. So from an attitude perspective, it could be one day something is okay, the next day it's not. Perhaps it's someone's acceptance of their role in the family, in the workplace, or in relation to a particular work task or something like that. And their belief: yesterday I believed this was the right thing to do, and now I believe it is wholly the wrong thing to do, something like that. And their approach: we're not doing it this way any longer, we're doing it this way, we have to do it this way. Or in their behavior: yesterday I was relaxed about this, and today I'm completely stressed and over the top anxious about this. So the attitude, the belief, the approach, the behavior is something that we have to be able to be cognizant of. And as I said earlier, the person or persons in question, right now, have made a decision to follow a specific path or a particular path. And from my experience, it's typically a decision that's made on the back of some form of emergent circumstance within their core being, within themselves, within their psychological makeup. So add to that on many occasions, the actual decision in and of itself might not be appropriately communicated, typically isn't, certainly in real time, and the person will still likely be processing the circumstances and working through their own reaction to it at the exact same time. So let's pause on that just for a wee bit and just gather what we know from what I've just shared there. So one day, let's say it's yesterday, the attitude, belief, approach, or behavior was one way. And another day, let's say today, it has swung to the complete other side of the pendulum. So that's one thing. We typically don't know why, certainly not in the beginning anyway, which then leads to further emotional reactions at our side to try and make sense of what is happening right now. That's the second thing. So then we are where we are, and we collectively need to work through the immediacy of the circumstance and for example, how destructive, if at all, it is, and what damage limitation, if any, is required, and what options are open to us in terms of arresting a situation that maybe is getting out of control and adjusting to the circumstances, to where more normalcy would be present, or would be desired to be present for everyone. That's a lot of stuff to work through, folks, isn't it? And a lot to take in, especially add on to that, there's an element of surprise related to it when you're kind of taken aback by the reaction, because typically in my experience, when people have a pendulum reaction, when I have a pendulum reaction, I'm not telegraphing that. I'm not communicating that in advance. It's just kind of happening in the moment, so to speak. So let's try and unpack that a wee bit more. And as I do mention in the blog, in my experience, no one appreciates being labelled as emotionally volatile. And no one likes to be on the wrong end of an emotionally volatile reaction by someone else. And certain people might label their volatility as some form of self-justifying behaviour. I'm single-minded, I'm strong-willed, I stick up for myself or others, I'm no nonsense, or any other number of reasons. And I personally don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful, or it's not helpful, I should say, and nor most likely in anyone's best interest to agree or disagree with their self-labeling for whatever they would justify it as during the pendulum event. You know, there's a very, very, very important part of my job as a coach is to absolutely not convince a client that they are one, any, or all of these things. My job is to help them understand that how we think influences how we feel, and how we feel influences how we act. So I'm going to just reinforce that again. How we think influences how we feel, and how we feel influences how we act. This is a very commonly understood cycle of human behaviour, and something that my coaching studies have certainly exacerbated over time. I have to admit, I used to have it mixed up. I used to think how we feel drove what we think, and then drove what we acted, and how we acted, sorry. So to get that into an actual semblance of order, and it's think, feel, act, has cleared up so many things for me and for certain clients that I've been dealing with as well. So let's look a wee bit inward, or look inward for just a wee bit here, if you don't mind. So can you think of a time when you yourself have cut off your nose to spite your face, when you've reacted in such a way that you know in the moment that you swing from one side of the pendulum to the other, and then you double down and decide that you're just going to stay right where you are, and everyone else is just going to have to get used to it. Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure most, if not all of us, have done a version of that at some point. And this is really important to me, because an overreaction to a specific circumstance can have far-reaching and avoidable negative circumstances that impact more people than just the individual making the decision to have the pendulum reaction. It could be your friends, your family, your work colleagues, your sports teammates, your neighbour, your parents, your kid. Like, you get the gist. It could be anyone who's within your circle. So the main reasons for writing about this is honestly just to raise your awareness that this is something that could be happening to or around you, and to maybe you could be the person who's actually having the pendulum reaction. So when you see people or yourself, or feel yourself reacting in a manner that just doesn't appear to be absolutely in keeping with or commensurate with the circumstances that you're actually trying to navigate in a certain circumstance, hopefully you're going to have more of a consciousness about what's happening, and a clarity as to whether you need more information about the situation, which will ultimately aid your reaction to their reaction, because that's the only thing that you get to control. The only thing you get to control is your reaction. And I completely appreciate that it's much easier said than done, of course. And I know that just as much, I know that personally just as much as anyone listening, but genuinely remaining open and curious about a circumstance, trying your very best to suspend judgment, and doing everything you can to not react and not fight fire with fire, will allow you a degree of subjectivity to the circumstance and help you decipher the best way to react to it. And another point that was raised on the blog was the emphasis on understanding that you can't stop other people's reactions, just as I said there. And most of the time, and if an emotional pendulum is in play, as I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be telegraphed, it's not going to be communicated to you in advance. You're likely not going to be aware of it until real time, until it's happening in the moment, or it's already happened. And that then brings a set of other challenges to manage in terms of how you're going to react in the moment, depending on the type and style of personality that you are. So recognising a pendulum response in yourself, especially if you catch it before you you announce or build into it, or to the intended end state at the other side of the pendulum, that's going to afford you the opportunity to course correct at the earliest opportunity. And it might not be until after the event has happened, but the earlier the better. And you just don't beat yourself up about when you get to the spot where you can kind of arrest the fall, so to speak, at some point, especially if it's a negative thing. And I just want to be very clear about this, and I don't know that I overly emphasised it in the blog. I'm not trying to suggest in any way that you're not allowed, or you're no longer permitted to react to a situation. It's more about allowing yourself the clarity and the headspace and the consciousness to ensure that your reaction is the best reaction, and is a reaction that's going to allow you to move forward knowing that you did your best based on the information that you had at the time. I mentioned earlier they're fighting fire with fire. We want to try and avoid that at all costs, because typically everyone gets a little bit burned if that's the case. I think this is really important, folks, and I hope that you do too. And your ability to read a situation is going to help immeasurably with your own reaction, which, again, to emphasize the point, that's the only thing that you have management of in a particular situation. And what I also cover in the blog is that it doesn't mean that you forgive bad or destructive behaviour, but you'll have created more conscious space for you to be able to react how you would like to react in certain circumstances and situations, and then just invest only what you need to invest in an interaction, own only what you need to own in an interaction, and then just let the rest of it go. More conscious awareness will create more space for a better and more appropriate reaction for yourself as well. So to wrap this up, when a person, yourself or others, is having a pendulum reaction, you're going to notice a dramatic change of some description. And it could occur immediately. It could develop over time, where you're going to notice and experience them swinging from one extreme to another. But some of the key points of the behaviour, and they're embellished a wee bit more in the blog, are that they're going to include an overreaction of some description, a lack of consistency, a lack of apparent critical thinking, the influence of others, an emotional involvement, and there's going to be certain elements of triggers that are going to be there as well. So people experiencing a pendulum reaction, it highlights the need for more emotional awareness within ourselves, and the ability to be able to be empathic and empathetic to other people as well. It'll need your critical thinking to be at its optimum in any given circumstances, and it will help you in maintaining a consistent set of beliefs, opinions, and attitudes about what is actually going on, to ultimately help you not be overly influenced by external factors, to help you maintain your own psychological stability in yourself, and hopefully help others to do the same. I think this is quite honestly something I'm going to come back to over time, to continue to test my theories that I've presented here in the blog and on this pod today. And most likely, if I do come back to it, it will be supported, or maybe rubbished, I guess. I'm open to that as well, by actual genuine published and credible research. Because the reason I wrote about this blog is that it is a pattern that I'm seeing more and more often nowadays, and I also see a lot of the negative effects on this, and that's certainly what I've concentrated a lot more on this time. So through my practice, my coaching practice, and ongoing work with clients, I do get an opportunity to delve further into this fairly regularly, and I really truly do look forward to seeing what more I can find out about this as I continue to support my clients and my community. All right, my friends, I hope this episode of the Best You, a Coaching Podcast, was a valuable use of your time, and that you will join me for more as we move forward together. If you did find it valuable, please do share it with others as we try to continue to build our community of like-minded folks across this fine planet of ours, and work towards being the absolute best that we can be. Don't forget to take a quick peek at garygillen.com for more content and more information, including the blogs and the previous pod, if you didn't happen to catch that one before. And until next time, please do take care of yourself, and all the very, very best to you in your journey. Cheerio now.